Thank you. My name is Cole Bush. I am a shepherdess from Southern California. You might be wondering, why the heck is this shepherd from California here? But I'm not gonna tell you all my secrets. I'm gonna hold on a little bit for tomorrow when I get to share with you a little bit more context of the work that I do in Southern California. I've been invited to speak with you today about low stress stockmanship and the sound herding practices that we use in my operation. I own and manage anywhere from 600 to 1,200 head of sheep and goats on the urban periphery in Los Angeles and Ventura counties. I work with about 5 first generation shepherds. And primarily we practice low stress stockmanship because I stress my stockmen out. So I try to practice what I preach. I try to lead by example, and I try to enter every day calm and cool, as I like to suggest and encourage my shepherds to work with our animals. I'm just going to give you a couple basic principles on the way I do it, and I do come humbly letting y'all know my experiences with small children. A lot of these principles actually apply. I'm the oldest of 6 daughters, but small ruminants, very different than some of our other types of ruminants that we work. So I'm not coming up here as an expert about managing bison or bovine of all kinds, but how I work with sheep and goats. And a lot of these principles can apply to those larger ruminants as well as humans, as I've mentioned. So these are some of the key principles that I work with when I first am training brand new folks to this work. They are just words until we start practicing them. Every day we have the option and ability to practice. The first one I think is really important. How our animals are behaving and how they are interacting with one another, what their behavior is in a paddock or a pasture, what they're eating, how they're eating, their rumination cycles, a lot of just observing how the animal, the individual animal, and then the animal in a group, in a flock or herd, can tell us a ton about how they're actually doing. Their comfort was their predator pressure in the middle of the night when the shepherd gets out. Are the animals all bunched together? Is the guard dog close to them, sitting right next to them? Are the animals loosely dispersed in the paddock? How are they responding to the human? When I walk up to the paddock electric fence and they see me and they're hungry, they're gonna let me know. They're gonna let me know when they're done in a specific paddock, meaning they're gonna breach that fence. You know, the job of the shepherd is to keep animals in, but they're gonna breach that fence if they're done. Even if there is a lot of what we think to be forage left at different times of the year, the palatability, the secondary compounds expressing that forage are different. And so it might be more tasty at different times of the year. And that's telling us actually a lot about what's going on, not just in our forages, but also what's going on in the ground as well. Slow is fast. Slow is fast. I like to sometimes think about how the general public and populations see what ranch work is like in the media, in entertainment. Whooping and hollering and dust and wild. And don't get me wrong, I lead a rodeo from time to time, but because of the type of risk that we work with in bringing livestock into urban places or areas where there's just a lot more population, we have to maintain a calm and cool and pace that our animals can feel. For those of you who work with equines, you know, when you're riding or you're approaching a new equine or a Mustang or even a colt, that animal can feel you, can feel they're tapped in to our own rhythms. And so when we think slow is fast, and we'll talk a little bit about flight zones too, but when you think about slow is fast, think about how you respond when there's chaos around you, or when you feel someone with anxiety around you. you're feeling it. And so do the animals. So slow as fast is an important concept. Set the conditions for your goal to be the animal's goal or the animal's idea. Again, principles with rearing children also apply. If we can coerce, we can encourage by actually setting the conditions for it, the animal to think it's its idea to do what goal is. And a lot of that can be in the design of our facilities. A lot of it can be simple placement, body placement, pressure, even visibility when we're using corrals. Are we using solid panels versus open slotted panels? All of these things will help the animal to decide how it's going to behave or react or move in a certain situation. Sometimes when we are in a high pressure situation and we simply just need to get animals into the truck for a variety of reasons, there might be dozens of people actually surrounding our corral in a public park, something like this. The animals can feel that excitement. We might be using all of our calm and cool principles and it's just not working. And we start getting more heightened and elevated and frustrated. What's the best thing to do when we've been putting pressure on for a long time? That's when we go take a step back. The shepherds who roll their organic tobacco and go and have a smoke. I'll go drink some water with some electrolytes and we just take a pause. We let the animals calm, we also calm, and instead of putting 3 or 4 people on different parts of that corral system, what are we gonna do? I say, everybody take a step back, Dylan jump in, or I'll go in, and we only work with one person after we reset to try to keep that energy calm and cool. Designing infrastructure, we just talked about that. That was really, really cool. I was talking to Brandon about how awesome it was to think about the design. You know, we work in such a mini scale compared to working with herds of bison, 400 head in the corral system. It's just mind boggling. But guess what? We use the same principles. They do apply when you understand your animals and their general instinctual behavior and also learned behaviors. We're working as a team, all of us. We're part of the herd. We are not working against, we're working with. They are my coworkers, they are my employees, a livestock, not just the shepherds, and the guard dogs and the herding dogs. We have to recognize that we're all one, and so we have to treat them with that type of respect. So I said, yeah, turn on the volume for this because I want them to hear it. And then then we realized you probably are gonna notice what you're gonna hear. Hopefully it's very little. You're just gonna hear the sounds of the animals living. We did a little experiment. There's 3 of us. It was a smaller group. But it was a practice that we had, which is like, let's see if we can load this thing without anyone saying anything, without any intervention, and just by placement of where we put ourselves. We had those young animals, they were yearlings, trot on up. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment for us. And that was a short clip, but I have several others of actually us practicing the same thing, loading 4-deck double semi-trailer that can fit about 400 head. And we practice that same thing, and the truck driver always comes up with a hot shot. He always comes and he's from a different place in the state and a different culture, and he calls me kind of little lady, and then he learns that I'm actually the boss and I own all of those animals and those are all of my employees and I am paying his loading fee. And I say, sir, we don't need to use that hot shot. He said, I'll decide that. And I said, okay, I will actually decide that. Why don't we watch and see if you're gonna need to use that, sir? And that first time he saw my team and my animals load up, and he never used that hot shot again, and I gained his respect by me respecting him, but also just saying, let's watch and see before we pull out that hot shot. not a peep was made, and I did put my business down there because I'm quite proud of that small little clip. Talk about infrastructure, we have to use mobile infrastructure. I know a lot of you, I mean, everyone here probably works in such a foreign context, but the concepts are translatable anywhere in managing land, in managing animals, working with wildlife, working with people, working with tradition and legacy and the future. We use a mobile aluminum portable corral system that just links on up onto a trailer, which is pretty cool. So we're able to haul that thing around anywhere we go. Those animals are trained to working in that system. Something I really like about this corral, portable corral system is called Porta-Yard. I imported it from New Zealand. If anybody's interested in these things, are pretty cool. They are super light. I design my systems based off of what I can manage and what I can handle and what I can carry. And I think that that's really important when we think about our systems is who's going to be working with us, who might be working with us, how do we design systems that can be accessible for different types of folks. And then there's simply things that I just won't do anymore or won't do at all. I used to do my fair share of shearing, and then I realized my animals were getting bigger than I was, and I called it quits. So I have folks on my team that can do the compatible work that, you know, everyone just gets into the right position for where we're just best suited. But this corral system for us has been a fantastic tool, and the design of the system, it's really important that you have that flexibility and mobility to have, if it's not fully mobile and easy to change, at least having parts of your system able to change, because sometimes you just do need to get the psychology or the mindset or the understanding of the animals. You kind of sometimes need to change it up, so they're a little bit sometimes confused, and then we make it their idea to do it the way that we want them to do it, and we can do that by playing with our little erector set. Something interesting that maybe those of you who have corral systems that are permanent, you can kind of see that nice dark circle or like half circle next to that corral system. That was clearly it was a holding pen or another location we had that. It's really incredible to see the next growing season, the vegetation difference when you're sitting in that high density, high impact, low duration. That is like the best example of how the land responds is actually in those corral systems when you're not using them. You can see, oh yeah, high density, high impact, low duration. Permanent corral system can really show you a lot. You can also see a lot of invasive species pop up as well because of the opportunistic nature of some of those invasives. But over time, we've seen places that have got a lot of that nitrogen, and there's lots of growth. Over time, we're changing that soil type and therefore creating the conditions for our desirables. So that's just a little side note on low stress. So the universal laws of herding is taken from Bert Smith, a really incredible sage in this space. I won't read all of these bits, but I think that these concepts are supportive of some of the things that I've already shared. It's never the animal's fault. It is our responsibility to set up the conditions for the animals to move safely and ideally efficiently and calmly. Like I said, it's not every time that we get it right. Sometimes there is maybe a hat or a hooper and holler, but ideally we create those conditions for it to be smooth and simple for the animals to do what we need them to do. For every task, there's a corresponding degree of patience required to complete it in a minimum time. Again, that's the slowest fast. It's the slowest fast. Anybody who knows me well knows that that's not my hummingbird nature. Actually, I'm actually practicing the low stress stockmanship techniques on myself right now, because I usually get pretty amped up sharing with new folks, but thank you for letting me practice. Every day we have that opportunity. When we're trying to get animals to move into something, they gotta see where they're going. Also, simply just watching where is the head of the animals is a good indicator of where they're going to go. And once you get one head turned, you just watch everybody else, because at least for sheep and goats, they move like water. If you're trying to herd and one slips out, you might as well consider them all lost. Don't try to go and run after that and think that you are going to be a successful border collie. That's not going to be your experience. Again, it's simply taking a step back and resetting. I'm really curious to talk to our reindeer herder friends, because I'm really curious on how some of these techniques may or may not work with some of our more intact and instinctual types of animals. And I did get to learn a little bit about what the next concept we're going to talk about. Flight zone, area in which when I step in, that's when he's starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable. So animals have that flight zone. We all have that flight zone. Understanding we can use this as a really incredible tool. And it's amazing how they respond. Different animals have different types of flight zones based off of their acculturation. Were they orphan animals that had been bottle fed their whole lives and they lived in the living room with you? Of course, they're going to just come up. Versus, let's say, some of our reindeer that are only gathered up once or twice a year. They have less experience, less relationship to humans, which to them, we are predators and we are prey, therefore they are going to instinctually respond. Their flight zones are much bigger. Understanding the visibility of where our animals' perception or their whole horizon of what they're able to see. Of course, our different animals have their eyes set in different places on their heads. You know, that's a indicative of a prey animal, right? Well, we can simply just step into that flight zone, but we can also step out. And it's really cool. You can just do this amazing dance with an animal that you've approached calm and cool. At least with my animals, I can step into the flight zone and I can step out. And that is where this dance that we call low stress stockmanship in my business is that it's just a sway. And that sway, slowly but surely, we're able to move animals in a calm and collected way just by entering in or tickling that flight zone. These are just, in general, some of the circumstances in which a flight zone enlarges. And these are kind of obvious, right? The faster a herder comes in, they're sensing that speed. They're sensing our gusto. Are we coming directly at them? Are we coming from the side? Are we having any eye contact? I mean, you look at a prey animal in the eye, they're going to respond differently than if you just pretend like you don't even see them. Also, an approach from uphill versus downhill is also a very interesting thing. When we're gathering animals, are we gathering from the bottom or are we gathering from the top? And how are they going to be responding differently? Here's the flight zone decreasing. If animals are comfortable and they're eating or they're drinking or they're ruminating and they trust you as the two-legged primate, they're going to be a little bit more chill, and that flight zone, of course, is going to change. So it's not just the individual animal and its history or its comfort with humans because it learned from its mother or others in the herd. It's the biological rhythms that also are indicative or impact or influence their flight zone, which again is a tool for us. I do want to just impart this. My context, again, is very different than yours. But what I can say is that these principles can translate to us as humans. And I think the most important thing that we can get out of this time together, because of our differences, we might all have different opinions in the world, but even in the ag and land and livestock community, we have to actually play with these principles with one another. Because truly, we're kind of a small subset in the world, and we actually do need to work together as a herd. And that means we need to understand others' flight zones, others' edges, others' boundaries, and find a slow, calm, cool, and collected way for us to do it together.
Do you think goats together?
Yes, we use a mixed, we call it a flirt, because the sheep are grazers and the goats are browsers, and we get paid to graze. That's my business. 90% of my revenue from my business is grazing as a service. And that means based off of the type of vegetation in any given area that we are grazing, I might need to actually prescribe sheep, goats, or both. They do a really good job. They have this competitive nature about them, so it's just kind of like, release the beast, and then the sheep and goats are off to the races.
Give me your business name again and, what grades you're in.
I am happy to give you a business card. My business is Shepherdess Land and Livestock. I'll be speaking tomorrow. And the breeds, very, very important question. Because of what I do, I'm not selling meat and I'm not selling fiber with my working herd. I use hair sheep. I use a Dorper hair sheeps. I have a shared hair sheep, and I use a little bit of katahdin as well. They are so hardy, drought tolerant, little chunks of sheep that can maintain their body condition. I'm not looking for gain, I'm looking to maintain. They're fantastic. I also run a Navajo Churro heritage flock, and they are my fiber sheep. And I only have them out on grazing contracts for certain times of the year because I don't want to spoil their wool. They have much more flighty, intact instinct, and they're a lot harder to work in these high stress situations. And then I use a Spanish boar cross. They're just big, meaty boys that I feed pizza, and they're happy and healthy. And if they're jumpers and I need to take them to the sale, they bring me more than what I bought them for. So those guys are really great.